Hey guys, so today we are doing a live about the Vivo X60 Pro. So we're just gonna start in a bit, just waiting for a few more people to join in. And of course, just want to point out that while we're doing this live, I'm also monitoring comments. So if you guys have any questions, make sure to just drop them in the chat box, and I'll of course get back to you. So today we're going to be talking about the Vivo X60 Pro, and yeah, so let's get started. And I'm just gonna quickly open Facebook as well just to see where. So today, guys, we're going to be streaming this on two platforms. We're on both Facebook and YouTube. So that's we've got comments already. Hey Ashaz, hey Pawan. Pawan Solanki, you want to know the price of the Vivo X60 Pro? It's starting at 59,990. So that's a pretty interesting price point for a smartphone that comes with so many impressive features, but at the same time also leaves out some things. So we're going to talk about. Okay, Sunil Kishore, you want to know about the iPhone 11 Pro Max camera regarding which is better. Okay, so we actually did a comparison of the Vivo X60 Pro with a few other smartphones, and we're going to be pushing out a video on that later. But right now, let's just talk about the X60 Pro's camera. So I've got the phone right here, and just clean that up a little bit. So it's got the Zeiss branding, of course, over here. It's got a primary 48 megapixel camera. It's and two other additional cameras here, both of which are 13 megapixels and are for the ultra wide and the telephoto lenses. Now, it's actually really, really uh, power, not 15,999, 59,990. Not, yeah. So, okay, now the thing is, with respect to the camera performance, with in comparison with the iPhone 11 Pro, um, the image quality is perhaps going to be better out of the Vivo, but at the same time, the iPhone has consistency on its side. Like the iPhone is so consistent with the images that it produces, the kind of quality you can expect from it. So it's a far more reliable camera. Like you can trust it blindly. You know what its limitations are. Let's say, for example, with the ultra wide camera, you may not be able to shoot in low light. You know these things, and you know what you can expect, and that's pretty good. With most other smartphones, including the Vivo X60 Pro, the results are phenomenal for the most part. But there are times where it falters, where the processing is excessive, etc. So um, we'll go with that. So now that we have quite a few of you watching, I want to talk to you about the Vivo X60 Pro today. I also, by the way, happen to have the Pro Plus. So let's just talk about the Pro for now. This is powered by Qualcomm's brand new Snapdragon 870 chipset. Now, the 870 is a very, very interesting SoC. It's basically the Snapdragon 865 Plus, which has been overclocked. And what you do get is a slight bump in frequency on the prime core, and everything else, for the most part, is pretty much the same. There's a slight bump in perceived GPU clocks as well. We haven't been able to verify that yet, but for we see that in benchmarks, yes, the 870 outperforms the 865, no doubt, across the board. But there is a very interesting behavior in real life usage. Now, when we actually play games on this phone and we record the metrics, we see that games don't go over 60 fps on most Android devices, and which is what we see here. So if you're getting 60 fps everywhere, then what's really even the point of a more powerful phone? Unless you're doing like super heavy video editing or very intense photo editing. Other than that, it shouldn't matter. So the Vivo X60 Pro comes with the Snapdragon 870 chipset. It's also, this particular unit that we have for review has 12 GB of LPDDR4X memory. You can also get one with 8 gigs of memory. But the 12 gig version also comes with UFS. Yeah, it's 256 GB UFS 3.1 storage, which is pretty impressive. The display is a Super AMOLED FHD Plus panel, and 6.56 inches. But the real star of this phone is the camera. So let's go over the camera as well. Guys, I know you have a lot of questions and I'm going to get to them. I do want to do a full rundown of the specs first, so just be a little patient with me. All right. So for the camera, we've got a 48 megapixel primary camera. This is a Sony IMX 589, which is mounted on Vivo's Gimbal 2.0 system. So it's basically a floating lens, floating sensor design. For the lack of, for to make it simple, it's essentially sensor shift but more refined, and it gives you a very gimbal like feeling. Like when you shoot from this phone, if especially if you're shooting videos, you get this sense that your camera is just floating no matter what the motion you may introduce to it. So that's pretty impressive. Then you also have a massive f1.5 aperture, which is, by the way, very impressive. Like, it's difficult to achieve larger and larger apertures on a particular sensor size, so it's not easy. And that's sort of where the Zeiss partnership, you can see, bears fruit, because Zeiss is a lens manufacturer which is, one of the most popular lens makers in the world right now. And it's difficult to achieve this kind of optical perfection. Well, I wouldn't call it perfection, but this kind of optical impressiveness without contribution from somebody who's been making lens for generations. So we've got f1.5 aperture, which also makes it a low light beast. And then in addition to that, you have a 13 megapixel ultra wide camera and a 13 megapixel 2x telephoto lens. So the focal length you're getting is 16 millimeter, 25 millimeter, and 50 millimeter. So those are your three focal lengths. Last but not the least, you've got the battery, which is 4200 mAh and supports 33-watt fast charging. All right, so that's the spec rundown. Now let's look at the questions. All right. So Hishmit wants to know if he should choose the OnePlus 9R or the Vivo X60. Now here's the thing: I haven't tested the 9R. We haven't gotten our hands on the OnePlus 9R yet. I don't know what its performance metrics are going to be like. Don't know how the cameras are going to perform. So I would not want to give you, an answer based on something that I haven't tried. But what I can tell you is that we've tested the 9 Pro, and when it comes to the camera, the Vivo cameras are just better. So if photography and video is important to you, and it's like the most important thing for you, where to the point where you're like, I don't care about the OS experience, and I don't care if the display is not 2K, and I don't care if the display is like not the ultimate best in the industry. I don't care about that, but I want the very best cameras. The Vivo X60 Pro is a very good choice. Um, then a lot of questions around X60 Pro or the OnePlus 9 Pro, X60 Pro Plus or the 9 Pro. Okay. Um, these two phones are so different in their nature. It's so surprising. The OnePlus 9 and the OnePlus 9 Pro are designed with the OS experience at their very core. Of course, that's what enables all of this impressive performance. You have a Snapdragon 888, yes. But if you notice one thing about OnePlus smartphones is that the OS experience is always extremely butter smooth, and it's one of the most simplified operating systems, close to stock Android, very little bloatware. With Vivo, the FunTouch OS is nothing like that. It is unfortunately riddled with bloatware. You have all of these notifications that keep coming in. There's unsolicited things in your notification shade. And there are a lot of apps that just by default have so much access and so many permissions enabled that you're going to spend at least an hour, hour and a half going through everything, disabling permissions. It's not a good experience. So, for the ones who want a hassle-free experience, the OnePlus 9 makes a lot of sense. But then there are others. There is a big market for people. There's a big market for the Vivo X60, and that is anybody who's into photography, and not just casually, but even professionally. Like, this camera does deliver some very, very impressive results, and honestly, it like really outperforms the OnePlus 9 Pro and the OnePlus 9 when it comes to the camera. So if camera is more important, then the Vivo is more to go. If you want a more holistic, if everything else is 8 on 10 sort of thing, then the OnePlus 9 is a better option. So, okay. Then we have Other questions? A lot of questions around the 9R. The 9R was actually something that we were really looking forward to. OnePlus hasn't shared a device with us yet, but we do expect to get it in the next few weeks, hopefully. Okay. We also have the iPhone 12 and the Samsung S21 Plus. Now, those are very compelling devices. The iPhone has, again, the most consistent camera ever. It may not be like the highest quality, but it's way up there, right? They are unrivaled in many accounts. The video quality of the iPhone is hands down the best when it comes to smartphone cameras. Remember, guys, like, it's not about the resolution, it's not about being able to shoot 4K, 8K, 12K, or 60 FPS. Like, I get everybody loves 60 FPS because your footage is smoother, or you can slow it down. But the disadvantage to shooting 60 FPS is also that in low light situations you can't have a shutter speed of 1/60th of a second, right? So um, that's where shooting 30 fps really comes in handy. So as long as you're getting that, your low light video also gets improved. Now, the iPhone does have the best video output. They also have fairly good image stabilization. The iPhone 12 particularly is using optical image stabilization on its primary camera, so it's still pretty good. You can shoot it, get fairly good usable footage. The stabilization is better on the Vivo, but overall, the camera output from the Vivo X60 Pro is still very impressive. The S21, interestingly, offers again a very stable and a very consistent experience with respect to the operating system, with updates. The quality of the display is impeccable, and the camera output is also fairly good. I would not buy into the whole 8K thing that Samsung has been pushing, but at the end of the day, it's still a very impressive camera. So, this is actually going to be a very hard choice between the iPhone, the Samsung, and the Vivo. Again, the iPhone is all round one of the most solid options because of its, the way Apple optimizes its operating system for the hardware. It's got a class leading display. It's got one of the best performance metrics in the market right now. And we know when the iPhone 13 comes out, it's again going to top charts. So, you know, that's that. Okay. Okay, I see a lot of you guys are having a conversation amongst yourself. That's pretty awesome. I'm glad that there is interaction going on. According to Vivo, okay, so Hishmet wants to know, according to the spec sheet, Vivo X60 or the OnePlus 9R? Oof, interesting question. Vivo X60. All right. Then okay. Very interesting question. Praveen Kumar wants to know how much degrees will the 13 megapixel cover. So I won't be able to tell you in terms of degrees because okay, and that's completely my fault because as a photographer I'm just used to talking about focal length in millimeters. It's a 16 millimeter lens, and you can just do, there are converters online that you can look up to convert to degrees, and you'll get a good idea. Typically, most ultra wide cameras are 13 or 14 millimeters. Just to give you a context, like the Samsung series, the iPhone, they're all 13 millimeter cameras. So this is 16, so it's not as wide, or I think, yeah, it's not as wide, but it is still extremely good quality for multiple reasons. One, the ultra wide camera actually features autofocus, which makes it far more usable. Like, I've been a huge proponent for the fact that the ultra wide cameras should come with autofocus because not everybody wants to shoot landscape. Sometimes you may want to have a quirky frame, you may want to get creative, and having autofocus really helps. So, there's that. After sales support. Okay, Hishmet is again saying that he's afraid of after sales support, future Android updates, and OnePlus is good at that. Can he play PUBG? Well, okay. After sales for both Vivo and OnePlus, they've got many service centers across the country. So depending on your region, one may be better than the other, or they may be equally good. With respect to OS updates, I mean, that's well, there is the issue of, okay, if you're pushing out so many OS updates, what are you improving, right? It's always bug fixes and stuff. So if you, let's say, if Vivo already shipped an operating system which was extremely good and stable to begin with, do you even need the updates, right? Of course, you need the security patches, but other than that, one thing about OnePlus updates is that they generally contain bug fixes and patches every now and then. Most of the updates are actually just that. So not too particular about, not or rather not very fond of that. Okay. Praveen Kumar wants to know, have we tested the benchmark? And guys, by the way, our review of the Vivo X60 Pro is live on digit.in. You can check it out. And for anybody who wants benchmark numbers, we actually have quite a few of them available on there, with the comparison to the OnePlus 9 and even the OnePlus 8T. Because so you've got the 865, you've got the 870, and the 888. So you can check all of those out. All right. So other questions. Uh, okay, which is better in terms of camera, Vivo X60 Pro Plus or the OnePlus 9 Pro? Bhat Shaheen has asked that question. I haven't actually used the Vivo X60 Pro Plus yet, but I have used the OnePlus 9 Pro. And if you read my review on digit.in, or if you watch the camera comparison that we've done, a very, very extensive, almost 25-minute long, what my video editors call a documentary on comparing the camera of the 9 Pro, iPhone 12 Pro Max, and the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra. My experience is that the camera output is definitely something that could be improved. It's mostly a software tuning thing that they could easily fix, and they have an excellent lab across the they have multiple labs, in fact, across the world. One in Hyderabad that is doing camera tuning improvements. They can improve that. But my biggest problem was with the camera app, which tends to be slow. Like, there is a mild shutter lag when you press the shutter button. There is a slight delay, and also in a lot of situations, not just between shots or in good light, but even, like, sorry, in low light, you can expect there to be a delay between shots. I agree. But sometimes it would happen even in the daytime. They would just go into this processing loop for no reason, right? So the app experience was very unsatisfying, I would say. It can always be improved, right? And so I wouldn't say that it's a bad camera, don't buy it. I'm not going to say that, but I do hope that OnePlus improves that so that you guys can benefit from your purchase. All right. Then, ooh, wow, lots and lots of questions. Okay. Okay. Gaurav Sood wants to know if Vivo V60 Plus, you mean the X60 Plus, or the V? Yeah, is Vivo X60 Plus the best camera in the market right now? If we talk about the Vivo X60 Pro, I do feel that it is one of the best in the Android space for sure. Best is a very relative term, guys. Like, what do you mean by best, right? Is it consistency in output? Is it the highest dynamic range? Is it the most so-called true to life colors? I mean, these are all very good to have, but they're near impossible to have on one camera stack. Like, it's extremely difficult. DSLR manufacturers have been trying it for decades, and they still haven't been able to crack it. So, there is that. Avinash and wants to know about the pricing of smartphones in India being justified. In fact, there are a few other questions around this point where people have asked if the pricing and of phones is justified. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, right? I mean, we see a lot of stories around, okay, this phone costs so much, but the parts for it only cost so much. But there's more to it. There is the research and development that's gone into designing that phone. There's research and development that's constantly happening to optimize the software experience. And there's a company has to pay for its operations. You have to pay for the service centers. You have to pay for all the parts that have to be bought or sanctioned, for the repair centers. So there's a lot that goes into the costing of a phone. And then there's also taxation. The Indian government levies certain taxes and duties on parts, components, whether they were made here or imported, whatever the case may be. So pricing is, of course, a tricky situation. I do know for a fact from my conversation with several manufacturers that they do want to sort of control the price inflation as much as possible, because it's simple. If the prices go up too much, you guys don't buy the next phone, right? So, and they don't want that. That's bad for business. So they are trying to figure that out. Uh, okay, coming from okay, wow. Okay. Okay. Now we have Rahul Mukherjee who says we have seen pro mode in videos coming from MI and OnePlus. How is different here, and how smooth are the focus transitions? Rahul, the focus transitions on the Vivo X60 is not as smooth as you would expect. That's mostly how a smartphone functions. It jumps for the most part, but while you do have this thing, it's still an acceptable way of changing focus. There's nothing wrong with it because, unless you're using a DSLR, you can get the focus rake and stuff. It's not the easiest thing to implement, and those who have done it have done so in a very good way. The OnePlus 9 Pro, for that matter, has a similar thing. So it's not a soft, gradual shift. It's not what you call focus raking, but the video way focusing is pretty good. There are occasions when all smartphone focusing systems will jump, especially in video if you have them in tracking. The Vivo X60 Pro gives you a lot of options for focus tracking, locking focus, etc., etc. It's a fairly well-rounded app, to be honest, and it's pretty helpful. And of course, with the Gimbal 2.0 stabilization, it's both your hand and your subject being as shaky as they may be, but the stabilization works very well. So it's still an impressive camera to shoot video on. Uh, Okay, there are a lot of questions around the Vivos, between the Vivo and the OnePlus 9. Okay, okay. There is unfortunately a delay in the stream, guys. Tried. I'm just hoping that you guys can, cope with that. Do you guys want to see? If you want to see some camera samples from the Vivo, let me know. I've got them on my machine right now. We can pull them up. But let me just the time you guys take to decide upon that. Let me just show you the phone itself. So this is the Vivo X60 Pro. Got the Zeiss branding right here. It's and this finish is like super interesting because if this finish is so difficult to photograph because you've got this really soft baby blue color which changes to purple, and then you've got a very black camera module. I do have to say though, and this is a little known fact, but the camera module on the Vivo smartphone, the X60 Pro, is actually blacker than you would see on most, and there is a reason for it. Now, when you have light coming into a lens, lens is made of reflective materials and transmissive materials. There will be some unwanted reflections. So in a DSLR, for example, lenses tend to be coated in materials that absorb light on the inside, so that you don't have what are called internal reflections. And this all of this material, black material under the glass here, sort of does the same thing. It tries to absorb all of the stray light so that when the rays go into the sensor, they're not causing what are called either internal reflections or ghosting or unwanted flaring. Now, while the primary camera does avoid that for sure, the ultra wide camera does suffer from some flares. So, that's a little unfortunate, but it is what it is. I'm just gonna have some water, guys. I hope you don't mind. Okay. All right. So, uh, Bharat is asking, will it give the Galaxy S21 a tough run in terms of the camera? I would say so, but at the same time, I do have to mention the Samsung Galaxy S21, 21 Plus, and the 21 Ultra. They have some of the most impressive focusing systems available on a smartphone camera right now. The primary sensor uses dual pixel AF model, which basically means that each pixel is sort of split into two and has a slight angle to it. And what that allows it to do, the sensor, each pixel in that way is seeing a slightly shifted ray of light, and that helps it determine the focus in a much much more accurate manner. And it's also why the Samsung cameras tend to focus really fast, at least on the flagships. I'm not going to be talking about the other series, but the flagships generally have that. So in fact the S21 Ultra in fact even gets laser AF modules, so it's pretty impressive. um, Rahul Mukherjee wants to know how much would I rate the Vivo X60 Pro versus the iPhone 11 in terms of video. um, if you talked about video quality, the final output, the iPhone 11 is still the best, one of the better ones, of course, simply because the iPhone tends to prioritize higher bitrate with respect to the resolution. So there is a reason why the iPhone is not gone out and delivered 8K video right now, or Apple hasn't done that yet, because the bitrate of the video finally determines the overall quality. If you drop the bitrate, the way that video will be optimized is that it'll start dropping information in terms of either brightness or shadow detail or color information for that matter, right? So you start losing out in what is called the perceived visual quality. Higher the bitrate, the more of that information is stored, and therefore the higher quality video you get. So iPhone 11 still the best smartphone. I mean, the iPhones are generally the better ones to shoot video on. The iPhone 11 will still compete with today's Android flagships and give them a run for their money when it comes to shooting video. But I would not go as far as back as the 10 series and expect the same kind of performance. Um, okay, a lot of okay. Ashaz wants to know if he should buy the X60 Pro Plus. Well, okay, if you care about the camera, if that's what you care about the most, then it's a no-brainer. The X60 Pro Plus is in fact even it offers even more than the X60 Pro. You get a large sensor on the ultra wide camera as well, which means your ultra wide camera output is definitely going to be much better. So, and you get stabilization as well. So overall it does offer a better camera system. And if so, we've tested the X60 Pro and definitely very impressive output, very impressive, I have to say. So I expect even more from the Pro Plus, and therefore it becomes a great recommendation. On the other hand, there are reasons to sort of not buy the Vivo X60 Pro Plus, and that is, if you like, if you like the stock Android experience, you're not going to enjoy FunTouch OS. If you care about a very high quality, good quality display, the X60 Pro Plus has an FHD Plus panel, and if the tuning of the X60 Pro is anything to go by, it may also not be the most color accurate. So you can actually check out a review of the Vivo X60 Pro to kind of understand how the display is calibrated on on the smartphone, and sort of draw your conclusions from there. We will have a review of the X60 Pro Plus coming out in the next few weeks. Once we've tested the phone and things like that. Um, Vishal Kumar wants to know if the Asus ROG 5 is better than both the OnePlus 9 and the Vivo X60. Well, it depends what you're talking about, buddy. Because if you're talking about being better at gaming, maybe if it can push some games over 60 FPS, perhaps. But without having actually tested the phone, I would not be able to tell you if it's going to be better or not. Um, okay.